Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesdays. Where are we still in August? I think we're still in August. It seems like this year is just flying by, but it is still August. It is the 12th day, already mid-August, unbelievable, of 2014. It is very overcast today here in Indianapolis. We had some nice rain yesterday going on, but not supposed to get up much past 82 for the next 10 days or so. So hovering around between 77 and low 80s, which is, to me, perfect weather. Some people, they were like, where the heck did summertime go? Going to go out and check on the tomatoes because they seem to be struggling this year without any kind of really warm temperatures. But everything else seems to be doing quite well in the garden. What is going on today in the news and the weather? Just a couple things paying attention to. Of course, we still have the forest fires going on in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Washington. I know it's affecting a lot of people, even up into parts of Canada. So, not good. Hawaii escaped quite a mishap there with a couple hurricanes headed right towards it, but seems like got some trees down. Did lose some life, but could have been much, much worse. So good to go there. A lot of flooding going on around the world, actually. Someone said, man, you can tell it's way early this morning. Significant flooding going on around the world today, not just here in the United States. So just some more than usual, let's say. But anticipating for fall, and this is from AccuWeather, it looks like the Northeast is going to turn a little stormy, more so than normal. Looks like, of course, the southeast coast is the highest risk for tropical impact. Well, that makes kind of sense right there. Haven't had much in the way of hurricanes so far. Just make sure you're ready for that if you live in that area. Of course, Louisiana, parts of Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, all those guys up through there, always on the lookout for some severe storms through the fall. A lot of tornadoes usually impact them. Of course, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, some rainy and wet weather going on. Up into the Midwest is supposed to stay really cold like it has. So we go from one year where it's 110 all summer to upper 70s. You get into Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, those guys up there, Colorado, parts of it have already experienced some snowy and cold weather. Unbelievable, I know. And of course, in California, still experiencing the drought which has quite a few people concerned when it comes to our food prices. So we've said it before, we've said it a million times. Make sure you have food preps on hand because food prices, if you haven't been to the grocery store lately, have increased, it seems, month after month, between the livestock that was lost last winter because of the severe snow and not getting, actually it came in early, so a lot of the ranchers had not moved their cattle down to their fields for the winter snows, and ended up losing thousands upon thousands of herds of cows and stuff to the drought in California that's going on. Definitely going to impact our food even more. So just a heads up, just make sure that you're ready. Tonight on After Dark, we'll be back. Hopefully by then my tongue actually works and my brain has woken up. It's been a long 2 weeks here, but we're going to have a special show tonight. Actually, Jane, Mom with a Prep, last week when she was on, she's like, why don't we do a show with our kids on there and pick their brains and see what they would do? They listen to us talk all the time. Can they rationale what's going on out there in the world and see what they would do? This is our future generation. So My kids, some of them anyways, and some other kids are going to be on, and we're going to sit and we're going to talk to them about some scenarios and see where their minds are at. But don't worry, you don't need to call Child Protective Services on us or anything like that. We're not going to torture them. And they are all homeschooled, so it's not like they're going to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get on the school bus. So definitely looking forward to that tonight. I know we've had some of the younger generation on in the past, and some of them seem to be spot on and wide awake to what's going on out there in the world. But long after we're gone, they're going to be carrying the torch, so we need to make sure that they get a solid foundation there. Some things in the news that keeping a heads up on. And I will admit I'm a tad bit behind, but probably the most in the news right now, the biggest thing is hit yesterday, actually 2 days ago, is what's going on in Ferguson, Missouri, down around St. Louis. And a black gentleman was shot, youth, unarmed, and I don't have all of the details because I'm hearing conflicted things. So I'm going to dig into it hopefully later today and tomorrow and find out what's going on exactly. But St. Louis looks like it's in a whole world of hurt right now with riots and stuff, and have called in, police state, try and get things under control. Is it warranted? I don't know at this point. So we'll see what's going on there. But definitely something that we need to pay attention to and watch and see what happens and see how humans react in different situations. In any kind of downgrade situation, I think you're going to see the same kind of behavior. These are very pissed off people right now. And they're doing what they think they need to do in order to make their voice heard. Whether we agree with it or not, it is what it is. But they are destroying a lot of property. And a lot of people's, it doesn't make sense because, and first thing, we've talked about in the past, downgrade situation, the first thing that a lot of people are going to do is go steal TVs if there's an EMP. But, that's why we do what we do. So we don't have to get into those kind of situations. We don't have to go there. We don't have to be around, and we can stay safe. So something that we need to pay attention to, if anything, to learn from. Another thing, this whole ISIS thing going on. And if you think it's not going to impact us here, I would appreciate it if either you would step aside or wake up. But just hit on Pigmy News this morning, where ISIS and Al-Qaeda, some members of Al-Qaeda is jumping forces and joining the bandwagon with ISIS. And we all know that Al-Qaeda is linked to, the CIA here in the United States. But, these guys are a little different than your typical Islamic jihadist. These guys are all full force. And if you don't think they're here in the United States, I would have a rude awakening for you probably pretty soon. It's been very, very quiet over here, and which is a little concerning. The rest of the world is just going to hell in a handbasket, and we haven't seen a whole lot over here. So why is that? Is our government really that good at protecting us, or are they just funding all of this stuff? And that's why, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. But, we need to be prepared in case something does happen. So get your head out of the sand and pay attention to what's going on around us. But ISIS, Al-Qaeda, joining forces, ISIS was badass on its own. And like I said, we're hearing stories of, the beheadings and things that are going on over there. Hasn't touched us here yet. Another thing, the whole southern border has quieted down. Haven't seen a whole lot in the news about it, but is that because we've all been wrapped up and paranoid over the Ebola crisis that's going on? From what I understand, the doctor that was brought over here to Atlanta has been recovering at a nice rate of speed, and it looks like they have found possibly patient zero, linked to a small child, 2 or 3 years old. So we definitely need to get caught up on the news on that one. But why haven't we heard very much out of the southern border? Is that because our militia's down there taking care of it? I don't know. So, and then, of course, you've got the whole Iraq, Syria, Russia, Ukraine mess that's going on too. But like I said, we've had the benefit of having a very quiet life here in the United States. Not a whole lot going on that we deal with other than the weather occasionally. But you can rest assured that a lot of these people are already stationed here in the United States, around the country. It did hit the news, and I need to dig into that too, about ISIS in front of the White House. Not that it wouldn't be that hard to make fun of Obama, quite honestly, but it looks like they're doing a fantastic job there. But stay safe out there. Pay attention, situational awareness. Don't get caught up in, what's on your iPhone and not pay attention to what's going on around you. Next week on Prepper Chick, we're going to have a gentleman, and I'm going to hatch his name up here because I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but he can school me on that next week. But his name is an author. His name is Stephen, I'm going to say Konkoly. It might be Konkoly, I don't know. But he has written multiple books. And the last one I read from his, I'm in the middle of a second one, was the Jakarta pandemic. And it is a book about a virus that goes out and wreaks havoc across the United States, and how a gentleman that lives in the Maine, let's say, Portland area, and he works for a pharmaceutical company, and how he, in his subdivision, deals with this pandemic. And very interesting book, a lot of information in there that will give you pause to think about your own situation. Have some questions for him about that, because he does input a lot of good prepping advice. One of those, and I think I talked about this last week, was specifically, I want to ask him, if you have a full-time job, or any job for that matter, and something happens, like a pandemic. Let's say even his was not Ebola, but let's say Ebola goes widespread, and we start seeing cases of it popping up around the United States. Now, if you look back at what happened this past winter, we saw multiple, thousands upon thousands of people get stranded on the roadways with the snow that happened, because and then they turned around and they blamed the Weather Channel and the governments and the federal government, the city governments, and everyone else for not keeping them safe. And yeah, I ripped a few, because I was like, whose responsibility is it, quite honestly, to keep your person safe? Are we just going to dismiss the fact that you have no responsibility whatsoever in keeping yourself safe? It's up to, our government and the Weather Channel to keep your ass in your house and tell you what to do. Even to the point schools were getting caught up in this, and children this past winter were stranded overnight in school buildings. And he poses a very good question. When do you step away from that? When do you, and it's pretty much been beat out of us to take that personal responsibility. But when do you finally say, enough is enough? You get a pandemic, great, you can go buy all the gas masks and herbs and whatever that you want. But your biggest defense against it is sheltering in place, nobody in, nobody out. And when do you decide that you've had enough and you lock your family inside your home? A lot of people out there will wait for the government to tell them to do that. They'll go about their happy lives out of obligation, out of feeling guilty that they're not there at their job. But they have to stop and think about the fact that they're putting their life on the line. Even sending your kids to school, when do you stop? When do you take a step back and say, this is my child's life, and I don't really care what the school district says, and I'll deal with the repercussions of that, but there's a disease that could possibly kill them. Do I wait for the school district to say, hey, I'm done, or wait for the school district to say that, they're going to close the school down and not send your kid? Because quite honestly, the people that run the government, the school system, the weather, they're humans too. They're just like the rest of us. We give them a lot of credence because they're supposed to be educated and, have all the inside information and blah, 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 blah. But I think we need to get back to where the individual actually thinks for a change and takes that responsibility to protect themselves and their family upon themselves. Because those other people, those other humans that we are relying upon to tell us what to do, make mistakes too, and they don't always have our best interests at heart. How many times, when you work out there, does your boss not care that you have the sniffles and you go to work because they're not all that accommodating when it comes to taking a sick day? So you go to work, you're not feeling good, next thing you know, it's going through the office. Take some NyQuil and get over it. It's kind of the mentality. But will be an interesting conversation because he does bring up a lot of those questions, those scenarios, those conflicted mindsets in his book. So I read the Jakarta Pandemic, and you can find him. Let me pop his website here in the chat room. He's on vacation right now, but when he gets back, we'll be talking to him. But definitely brings up some interesting things that I want you to think about. And good morning to everyone in the chat room. I wasn't ignoring you. There was like 2 people in there when I started because it's so early. But looks like there's 5 in there now. Woohoo! But Steve Konkoly, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. The Jakarta Pandemic, if you get a chance, read it. Like I said, it does make you think about some things. And right now I'm reading The Preside Collapse. And he has just a ton of books out there. So check him out. Really good writer. Easy to read. His prices are not outrageous or anything like that. But definitely something that I want to dive into and talk to him about. But he'll be on both the 8 a.m. show, so you don't have to just listen to me rambling on in the morning. And then he'll be back to Placing Conflicted After Dark in the PM. But I want you to think about that this week. Think about how much credence would you give the government or your employer, your boss, in keeping you safe, and when are you going to stand up and make that determination on your own based upon what you're seeing out there. And I'm saying that with the intention that you're not going to go full renegade on me and cause quite a stir. But I want you to, just sit back and at least think about it for a second and think about taking responsibility for your own. Another thing, I thought this was kind of cool. If you haven't seen it, when I get a chance to sit down and actually watch TV, and I don't remember which channel this is on. Let's see if I can skim the article here real fast. But there's a show on called Vikings. Oh, it's on the History Channel. And on August 16th, so in 4 days, and where is this? I think it just said it was in Dublin. Yep. they're having an open cast call for to be on the show. Now, if I had the chance, I would so do this, because if you haven't gotten a chance to watch the show, and I've missed it here and there and everywhere in between, but really good show. A lot of things to pay attention to, and ideas and survival and things like that, but different kind of mindset. They'll be filming in Ireland, so if you've ever wanted to go to Ireland, it might be your chance, but and earn a paycheck while you're at it. So on a very cool show. So if you get a chance, I'll pop that in the chat room too. But you can go to looks like that did not go through, but auditions to be on the show. So I think that would be cool to be on the show Vikings. So one thing that with everything going on out there in the news, a lot of people are starting to get a little panic going on out there, and have seen an uptick in the number of people that have come through the pages and said that they are new into preparedness and all of that. So wanted to go back and talk about specifically how to get started, because a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, what do I do? How do I get started? Do I need a lot of money? Those kind of things. And then from there, I want to talk about our gardening and our perennial vegetables. We'll continue on with that since I'm meandering by myself. But to get started, what do? I mean, there's so much information out there. There are a ton of great websites. I've noticed that there seems to be a line drawn in the sand, though. It kind of cracks me up to a degree, because if you look at the prepper sites that are run by males, they seem to be more geared towards protection and all of the cool stuff and the gear and, the bug out bags and guns and, building traps and, self-protection, that kind of stuff. And then you look at the prepper sites that are run by females, and you get into more of the homesteading, the gardening, canning, things like that, sewing, making quilts. And isn't it like that in real life? When Eddie and I got started, he came from New York. I grew up on a farm in Ohio, so a lot of the things that we do, I've always done. So when we got married and, cohabitated and all of that, his thing, is firearms. That's his hot button. So he just ran with it, and it's kind of commingled now between both of us. He still doesn't get into the canning a whole lot, or the gardening, or quilting, or anything like that. But if there was anyone that I would want to make sure that had my back, it would be him. And I grew up with guns, mostly rifles and shotguns, so the handgun section of that is newer to me than anything else. So he's taught me a lot just by osmosis and living with him over the years, which has been great. We got to spend 5 hours teaching this past weekend the Utah concealed carry class, so people from Indiana can drive into Ohio legally. So imagine that. You have to go to Utah to get a gun license to do that. And the reason is mostly because Indiana does not require any formal training in order to own a firearm. You can just go purchase one and then go get your license. No formal training whatsoever to get your license, I should say. And Ohio, on the other hand, requires an in-depth class in order to get your carry concealed license. So because Ohio is a lot more strict, they do not recognize someone as lax as Indiana. So there are ways around that. Unfortunately, you can't get an Ohio license unless you live in Ohio. But you can, they do honor certain states, and one of those is Utah. So a couple of years ago, Eddie and I drove out to Utah, and we got training in order to teach the Utah class to residents of Indiana. so that they could travel into Ohio. So we got to spend this past weekend with, I think about 20 people, and talked about owning firearms and the responsibilities of that and whatnot, so that I got to fingerprint them, because I learned how to do that, and filled out all the paperwork so that way they can send it to Utah. And a lot of these people do travel for business, so it was a good thing. And it's always a good thing when more people take that responsibility. The one thing that we did talk about, though, in the class was mostly women. And just a heads up out there, a lot of our rest stops, specifically along the freeways, are owned and run by, not necessarily owned, but run by the federal government, the park system. And it's illegal to carry a firearm into a rest stop, believe it or not. You need to know what your laws are for the ones that, if you're traveling. But that's a personal choice that you have to take. Are you willing to break the law to keep yourself safe if you have to? I will honestly say that I have done so. We've seen too many bad things happen in rest stops. But that choice is up to you. Just a heads up, though. Just make sure you know what the rules are, the laws are in the state you're traveling through, and what choices you're willing to take in order to keep yourself safe. So, off and running. So, how do you get started prepping? First thing out there that you need to think about is, are you have the right mindset? Are you wanting to survive through whatever is coming? And that's an odd question, you might think. But I think we saw yesterday, with the passing of Robin Williams, which was quite a shock, that there are some people that don't have that mindset, that just don't want to do it any longer. And unless you are willing, or you have that desire to live, being prepared isn't going to do you a whole lot of good. When you give up, you give up. And no amount of tools or supplies is going to help you through that. There's several good books out there to read pertaining to survival in some kind of I want to say terrorist attack, but some kind of accident, plane crash, boat accident, anything like that. And it talks about why some people survived and others didn't. The biggest thing is that most of the people that survived felt that they had to take care of other people. They had a job, they had a duty to do. But they also had a burning desire to make sure other people lived. So it was in their mind that they needed to live in order to help other people. And it's the same kind of mentality when they talk about when you're flying. You know, when the oxygen masks drop, you know, do you put it on your child first? Well, that's going to negate you from getting oxygen. So it's better for you to put the oxygen on you and then try and save people. So make sure your mentality is where it needs to be. And then you work yourself through some situations, you know, some scenarios. Because things could get very rough. So once you have the mindset down, then you need to move on from there. You get into skill sets. Skill sets before physical preps? Why, yes. Yes, I say that. Because physical preps can be taken from you. Skill sets, you need to learn how to purify water without any special tools. Because that fancy-dancy little Berkey water filter that you have could be destroyed in a tornado. That house that you live in, that you keep all that bleach to purify water with, could get mowed over with a tornado. So then what are you going to do? Skill sets are very, very, very important. And I was just flipping through. Let me see if I can find it real fast. I was just going through a list of skills that I thought was a pretty good list for people to know. And Um, there we go. Where's this list? Todd Jones wrote the book. It's called Fully Prepped, a comprehensive guide to what you need to be prepared. But he does go into skill sets in here, and some of the things that he is looking at that you need to know. Now, of course, being physically strong, you need to, your physical preps. Make sure that you're in the best shape possible. But skill sets, welding, frugality, small engine repair, fishing, hunting, gardening, butchering, trapping, hair cutting, gunsmithing, basic carpentry, sewing, auto repair, entertaining, ham radio operation, larger scale cooking and baking, advanced first aid, people skills, perseverance, and defense. He finds are very pertinent to survival. I think you need to look at each area of preparedness and dig it apart. So when we talk about that, talk about water, food, personal protection, medical skills, all of those, and look at doing those and how you could do those without having the supplies, the physical supplies on hand. How would you go about that? And what would you use in order to improvise? I think a lot of times people get caught up in, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to need this, 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 and this. And that's the only way they train. That's the only way they look at doing things. But what happens if that stuff gets taken from you? What if you no longer have access to it? What are you going to do? So if you can build a fire to stay warm or to cook food on, it's easy enough to do it with matches. But what happens if you don't have matches? Well, I'll use a lighter. Well, what happens if you don't have a lighter? Then what are you going to do? Well, I can, use a magnesium rod. Okay, so what happens if you don't have that? Do you know how to build a bow drill and be able to just pick up a couple twigs and make a fire by what you find laying around you? Those skills are very, very important. So take each area of preparedness that's out there that you're digging through and working through and take out all the fancy equipment, and what are you going to do then? Food. I'll throw another example out there. Food. We talk about dehydrating. I myself own a Excalibur dehydrator. But what happens if I can't use it? Do I know how to dehydrate with my oven? Okay, so what happens if I can't use my oven because we have no power? Do you know how to dehydrate just using the sun? So it's always keep going down that path. Once you pick up on the basics of it, start going down that path and take away the physical items that you have in order to be prepared. So mentality, and then your skill sets. Now another one that you can place anywhere you want, and it's totally up to you. Some people agree, some people disagree, but for a lot of people, their spirituality comes into play at more towards the beginning. So, do you believe in a higher power? Are you relying upon that? Where's your mindset there? So, move that where you need to when it comes to how in tune you are with that part of your being. Do you meditate? Do you need, certain items? I'm thinking physically, a Bible, if you're a Christian. What happens if you don't have that? Can you still be prepared spiritually if you don't have the physical Bible on hand? The verses that you need to look for. So, start going through that. So then we get into the full-fledged. So the first three require no special tools whatsoever. Then you get into the more of the prepping that most people think about. So first thing is water. Most important out of the next group is water, because you can't survive for very long without it. Your body requires it. 3 days at the most, and at that time, probably before that, depending on how physically fit and how your body is now, your mentality is going to start, maybe that's what's wrong with me this morning, is going to start diminishing the longer you go without water. Can you survive longer than 3 days without water? It's a possibility. But like I said, you're not going to be able to think clearly, and you're going to start making some stupid choices. So, rule of thumb for water is 1 gallon per person per day. And that's just to stay hydrated. Now, if you're physically active during this, you might need a little bit more than that. If you're not as much and you're just going to sit around and play cards in the dark, probably not going to need quite as much. So you're going to need to adjust that. Now, that does not take into account anything that you're going to need for hygiene or cooking or anything like that. Those of you that have decided that you're going to store all this dehydrated, freeze-dried food and whatever, have you thought about the fact that you're going to need a ton of water to get that stuff edible? So, if that's your rationale for food, then you need to up your water prep significantly. So have water on hand that you can consume right away. That's ready to go. Bottled water, whatever. They make it in the gallon jugs and the individual bottles in the big 5-gallon things that you flip upside down on your water cooler. You know, all those kind of things. It's water that you have right now that you can drink. And be warned, we saw this past week in Toledo, Ohio, when they could not use the city water, not even boil it. People were scalping water for $15 a case. So you have your immediate water. Then you have long-term water storage. Water, I'd flip it out at least once a year if you can. Stored with a little bit of bleach or iodine in it. That's used in 55-gallon barrels. A lot of people use those. I just got a couple of the water bricks. Wanted to try those out. They're 3.5 gallons. A little expensive, but they do stack on top of each other and make it a lot more safe for that. I do have 5-gallon water containers. All of that is more for long-term storage. But I have it on hand to use when I need to as my backup to the immediate use water. But then you need to think about what happens when you run out of that water, because it'll happen. I mean, you only have a finite supply. Do you have the knowledge to be able to set up some kind of catchment system to replace it with? Whether that's off of the gutters on your house, whether that is off of or out of a well, out of a spring, out of a creek, out of a river, whatever you have access to. My only concern there is don't get caught up in the fact that, well, I have a pond or I have a river or a creek or something that runs through my property. Always upstream, people have the ability to contaminate it. So you need to have some kind of secured system to catch water. And don't rely upon the Mississippi River that runs through your backyard because, like I said, it could easily be contaminated. So then once you have your catchment system, you need to look at learning how to filtrate the water that you have captured, and then purify it. That's all part of your water preps. And it's a lot. And we do have all that information up on our website, prepperchicks.org, if you want to go dig through it. But everything's up there. Those are skill sets that you need to have. And like I said, if you don't have the actual physical water prep itself, A gallon of water weighs about, I think we were talking about this last week, actually, if you need to carry water for survival in your bug out bag. A gallon a day, and you're going to be on, let's say, on the road walking for 7 days. That means you need 7 gallons of water. Okay, a gallon of water weighs a little over 8 pounds, not including the container itself. Are you going to be able to carry 56 up to 60 pounds of water extra on top of your bug out bag? I doubt it. So you need to learn how to be able to find water, get it purified so that you can drink it without getting sick. And yeah, they make the little tablets and all of that, but quite honestly, boiling water is probably your safest. So, learn those skill sets. Then we get into food. Like I said earlier, how long or how large of a food storage that you want to keep is entirely up to you. A lot of people use a year as a rule of thumb. Do you have the room for that? If you live in an apartment or something like that, do you have enough room to store a year's worth of food for your family? A lot of people also look at buying one of those, like I said earlier, one of those fancy dancy little, I've got a 5 years worth of dehydrated, freeze-dried food stored up in my basement or someplace. And they don't bother to look at, they don't open it. They keep it in the cardboard it came in, the boxes, and they just put it aside and, don't mess with it, because that's their long-term food storage. That's going to save their asses once shit hits the fan, right? So they don't open it and look at the food and learn how to use it or anything like that, and realize that it takes a lot of water to get that stuff back to being edible, which is another mistake. So before you go that route, do me a favor, get a pen and a piece of paper and sit down at your table and write down the meals that your family actually eats. And do this, do it for a week. Sit down and write out a meal plan for 7 days that your family would actually eat. Include breakfast, include lunch, include dinner, include snacks in there. And then I'd also throw in, is it someone's birthday, or special occasion or something like that. And then throw in what you normally would maybe, if it's a birthday, throw in a cake or something, or that special dinner that you guys always have. And then take that meal plan and break down it into recipes. Take that ingredient list. Go buy yourself a tote, a big tub, and you're going to go get those ingredients specifically for that 1 week of everything that you would need in order to prepare that meal plan. Another thing that you need to look at is how you're going to cook these meals. And make sure you have the utensils on hand if there is a power outage. But once you have these ingredients, you're going to put them in the tote along with the recipes and how to cook these things. Because if something happens to you, your family is going to need to know how to, what these ingredients are for. Because if you just open a tub full of stuff, you could easily overshoot that and have a bunch of stuff left over that you have no idea what you're even going to use it for. So make sure you put the meal plan and the recipes, just tape it to the underside of the lid, and keep it with the ingredients. So there you have 1 week's worth of immediate food that you can use that your family will actually eat. Now, can you use ready-made stuff like ravioli and chicken noodle soup in a can and things like that? You know what? If that's what your family eats, then go for it. We can get into that whole argument I know about, that's going on out there about, that's not healthy for you, you shouldn't eat canned stuff, blah, blah. You know what? If that's all you have, but that's what your family eats, then do it. Get the macaroni and cheese that your 3-year-old, that's the only thing that they're going to eat. We're talking life and death here. We're not talking about having the ability to be picky about only eating, organic foods. So get your week's worth of food in a tub. Make sure, like I said, your meal plan's in there, your recipes are in there. And go down to seasonings. I mean, detail it out as much as you can. Have it all in there. Now you have a week's worth of food. Now you're going to do it for a second week. You know, typically the most a family eats, if you actually sit down and think about it, is maybe 21 different meals. It seems to be the standard that a lot of families go with. You know, it's like every Wednesday we have meatloaf. Well, that's pretty easy to prep for. So sit down and do that. Build 1 week, then go for 2 weeks, then go for 3. Once you've done this and have enough build up, before you hit like 6 months, then look at your long-term food storage. But at least you have several months worth of immediate use food. And in a downgrade situation, you know, the first thing, let's say, and I'm talking not doomsday here, we're talking just regular life. Let's say storms come through, knock out the power, you know, got trees down all over the place, possible tornadoes, upturned cars, medical attention needed for people. Last thing you want to need to do is try to figure out what you're going to eat. So if you do your food storage like this, it's that part of the equation is taken out for you. You know you can feed your family. You've got the food on hand. You know what you're going to feed your family, and you know that everything's there and how to cook it, and you've got the recipes and everything. How much then can you focus on other areas that you need to take care of, like getting trees cleaned up and medical attention to those that need it, or, you know, making sure, you know, hygiene is taken care of. So now you need dysentery, you need to build a toilet because the sewers are backed up and things like that. It's one part of the equation you don't have to focus on. It's already taken care of for you. You know, once you get in, like I said, your 6 months food supply ready on hand stuff, then look at the long-term food storage. Then look at, you know, the 5-gallon buckets of rice and flour and things like that. But don't just store them. Make sure that you use them. Make sure you know how to cook with them. Make sure that freeze-dried, dehydrated food that you have, that you've decided to purchase, that you open up some of that and you use it on a regular basis, so it's not such a shock to your system. Last thing you need is to get sick from the food that you're cooking in any kind of downgrade situation. You know, and it could be as simple as, what about unemployment? All of a sudden you lose your job. So now you're digging into the dehydrated food that you have on hand. But you've never opened it. You don't know how to cook with it. Your body is going to have a very hard time adjusting from the foods that you typically eat to straight up dehydrated natural foods. You're going to lose a lot of weight, probably a lot of fast, really fast, and you know, it's going to incapacitate you for a while. I'm not going to get into all the gory details, but let's just say you're going to spend a lot of time in the bathroom. You don't need that right then. So look at that. Can you do it on the, and you know, the question is, well, I don't have a lot of money. You don't need a lot of money. You know, pick up a couple extra items each time you go to the grocery store. But you have a list that you can work off of that you can check off as you get the items. You don't have, do you have to go buy an entire week's worth of food at once? A lot of people can't afford that right now. No, but you can, every time you do go to the store, pick up a couple extra cans of this or a couple extra, you know, items of this that you can put into there. Is it going to take you longer? Yeah. Should you start it earlier? Quite honestly, yeah. But bottom line is you get started, because the longer you put it off, the less you're going to have. How about medical supplies? Been a hot topic right now with what's going on in the news, specifically with Ebola, with what's being brought over from out of Mexico with TB and lice and, you know, things like that. can't stress enough the fact that you should have some kind of fine particle respirator type mask in your breathing mask in your medical supply kit. And I say this with the fact that if something breaks in the news that Ebola has spread, you're not going to be able to get your hands on this stuff. And it is in your best interest to do it beforehand. There is a lot of research being done and items picked apart and a lot of good information out there. Just watch where you get it from, pertaining to some natural remedies for some things. Biggest advice I would give you for this is your body is amazing at healing itself without all of the junk that we put into it nowadays. Get yourself off of the refined sugars, off of, the white bleached flours, and allow your body to do what it was built to do. Get yourself healthy. That's the biggest thing in the medical field that you could do, is get yourself healthy first. Once you're on that journey, build yourself a home medical kit. Cheapest thing to do, in my opinion, and what I've done, and it's amazing for organization, is go get yourself a cheap fishing tackle box. And then you can, with the fancy little compartments in it that people use for, their worms and their lures and things like that. Awesome thing to use in order to keep your medical supplies organized. Then you can go get your standard, your Band-Aids, your antibiotic creams, all of those kind of things, and keep them in there and keep them organized. One of those little compartments is awesome for keeping all the different sizes of Band-Aids organized. So all you have to do is grab it, the little plastic container. You just grab it and everything is there and organized, and you can see exactly through it because it's clear plastic. You can see what's in it. Probably one of the best pieces of equipment that I have. Colloidal silver, it's being talked about. I use it on a lot of things. I think it's great. You can buy it already made, or you can buy the kit to make it itself. Get into some essential oils. I love thieves oil, which reminds me I need to go do something. I think it's a great thing. I use it to clean my house with. It's got a lot of hot oils in there that kill a lot of germs. Thieves oil has also been known to eradicate mold in your house. So bleach is not the way to go if you have mold. All it does is take the spores off. Borax, Mule Team Borax, stuff that you wash your clothes with, is a better way to go because it actually kills the spores down in there. But thieves oil does too, and I've actually been testing it, and it actually does work. Imagine that. But get into the naturopathic part of healing instead of just going to a traditional doctor. Heal your body up and allow it to work properly. A lot of the stuff in the grocery stores now, probably 98% of it, we shouldn't be eating to begin with. But get those things started, and then look at how are you going to protect yourself. These are the biggest hot topics, and then you can go off from there with shelter and fire and power and all that stuff. But these are the most important. How are you going to protect yourself? Some people aren't comfortable with having firearms in their house. That's your choice, a choice that you're going to have to make. But it's being reported in the news with what's going on in Missouri right now with the rioting and stuff, that you see the pictures, a lot of guns out there. How would you protect your house and your family in a downgrade situation with someone trying to break in? How would you do it now? A lot of information out there that you can get, but the choice, you have to do it. You have to step that foot forward, and you need to get started. I see a lot of people recently waking up to the fact that, Preppers aren't about doomsday. We're not about the Mayan calendar and it's the end of the world and Y2K and all of that. We're about everyday kind of crisis situations that are going on. Tornadoes coming through, weather, bad weather, hurricanes, the employment situation, the economy crashing. Quite honestly, I'm kind of surprised that it's held up as long as it has. But soon, something has to happen. So how are you going to be able to feed your family and survive when the dollar goes away? Now, will there be a currency set up? That remains to be seen. Will we be sucked into a global economy, a global monetary system? More than likely. But you need to be prepared for anything. What happens if you lose your job? What are you going to do? Questions that you need to ask yourself. What if someone in your family gets sick and you can't afford medical care? What if you're quarantined in your house? What if you go to work one day and the news breaks that everyone is required to shelter in? You try and get to the grocery store, but it's jam-packed and there's no way you can get in there. Or do you have enough supplies on hand to be able to just go home and shelter in place for a while? Whether it be 3 weeks, a month, whatever it takes. Wouldn't it be a peace of mind to be able to just go home and know that you have everything taken care of? It can seem overwhelming, but start with those areas. There's 3 that you don't have to have special supplies for, and 3 that you're going to build up. Start there. Actually 4, I guess. So the mindset, your spirituality, and your skill set. You don't need special supplies for those. And then look